sticky note, yellow, small, 3 words written in black ink. It was sitting on top of 1,000 pages of legal documents in a high-floor office in one of the most powerful law firms in Atlanta. The young woman who found it had been asleep at her desk. Her coffee was cold. Her eyes were swollen. She had been working on a case worth millions, and she was losing. She almost threw the note away. She almost crumpled it up and tossed it with the coffee cups and the takeout containers and the other pieces of paper that had been piling up for weeks. But she read it, 3 words, and her hands started shaking because those 3 words changed the entire case. They exposed a lie that dozens of lawyers had missed. They saved millions. And they came from the last person anyone would have suspected, the janitor. The man who had been mopping their floors for years, the man they walked past every single day without learning his name, the man who emptied their trash cans and wiped their desks and disappeared before the sun came up. He'd left 3 words on a sticky note. And when they checked the security cameras and saw who wrote it, the entire firm went silent because the janitor had a secret that had been buried for years. And those 3 words didn't just save the case. They blew the door open on a life that no one in that building knew existed. Now, if you believe that the most powerful person in the room isn't always the one sitting at the head of the table, stay with me. Because what they discovered about the man who mopped their floors, it will change how you look at every person you've ever walked past without seeing. He arrived every evening. He left every morning. And in between, he was invisible. Jalen was middle-aged. He had been cleaning the offices of Hale, Chen and Associates for years. High floor, one of the most prestigious law firms in the Southeast. The kind of place where the coffee machine cost more than his car, and the partners billed more per hour than he earned in a week. He knew the building better than anyone alive. He knew which elevators were fastest. He knew which bathroom faucets dripped. He knew that the light in conference room B flickered every Thursday for reasons no one could explain. He knew everything about this place, and no one knew anything about him. The lawyers walked past him like he was furniture. Not with cruelty, just with the kind of blindness that comes from never needing to see someone. He was the man with the mop, the man with the trash bag, the man in the gray uniform who kept their world polished and clean. Preston Hale, the managing partner, passed Jalen's cart in the hallway every evening. Same time, same hallway for years. He had never once looked at him, not with disrespect, just with nothing. The complete absence of recognition, the kind of invisibility that is worse than hatred, because at least hatred means someone knows you exist. Jalen never complained. He did his job. He was thorough. He was precise. He mopped in straight lines. He polished the conference table until it reflected the skyline. And he emptied the trash without leaving a single piece behind. And every night after the last lawyer left, after the hallways went dark, and the only sound was the hum of the air conditioning, Jalen read. Not novels, not newspapers, case files. He read the briefs left open on desks, the contracts stacked in review piles, the depositions printed and highlighted and abandoned when the lawyers went home. He didn't take anything. He didn't copy anything. He didn't move a single page out of place. He just read the way a musician who has lost his instrument still hears music in everything. Read the law because the law was the only thing he had left of the man he used to be. Vance Palmer was the only person in the building who talked to Jalen. Night security. He sat at the lobby desk with a thermos of coffee and a crossword puzzle. Evening, Professor, Vance would say every night when Jalen walked in. And it was a joke. Vance had called him that since the first week because Jalen spoke like a professor. Precise, careful, every word chosen like it mattered. Evening, Vance, how's the high floor tonight? Same as always. The partners left their coffee cups on the conference table again, shocking lawyers who can't clean up after themselves. Jalen would smile, small, polite. Then he would take his cart to the elevator and disappear into the building. And Vance watched him go every night. And every night he wondered the same thing he had wondered for years. Who was this man really? Because janitors don't read case files. Janitors don't pause at a partner's desk to study a contract. And janitors don't correct a typo on page of a deposition with a pencil mark so light that no one ever noticed who made it. But Jalen did every night for years, and no one ever asked why. But there was one office Jalen never cleaned after hours, one door he always walked past without stopping, until the night he heard her crying on the other side of it. And that night changed everything. Sierra Vance was young. She had been at Hale Chen and Associates for months, and she was drowning. She was the youngest associate on the litigation team, the only black woman. She had graduated top of her class from Columbia Law, and she had turned down offers from bigger firms because Hale Chen had promised her real cases, real responsibility, a real shot. They gave her Harmon Pharmaceuticals, a company that had sold a drug called Veritol to hundreds of thousands of patients across the Southeast. The drug was supposed to treat chronic pain. Instead, it was destroying livers. Thousands of patients, hundreds hospitalized, many dead. The evidence seemed overwhelming. Internal emails, suppressed safety reports, whistleblower testimony. Hale Chen had taken the case on contingency, which meant if they won, the firm would take home a percentage of millions. If they lost, they got nothing. And they had already spent months and millions in preparation. The trial was days away, and the case was collapsing. Harmon's defense team was one of the best in the country. They had challenged every piece of evidence. The drug was dangerous. There is no document, no signature, no proof that Brielle Harmon personally authorized distribution after the safety concerns were raised. That was the gap. The one piece of evidence the firm couldn't find, and a document linking the CEO directly to the decision to keep selling Veritol after the safety reports came in. Without it, the case was circumstantial, and circumstantial didn't win million-dollar verdicts. Preston Hale was panicking. He had staked his reputation on this case. He had told the other partners it was a guaranteed win. Now he was spending every meeting looking for someone to blame. And the easiest target was the youngest person in the room. The deposition summary on exhibit is a mess. Vance, did you even read the source material? I read it multiple times, Mr. Hale. The witness contradicted her own, then read it again and fix it. I'm not losing this case because a first-year associate couldn't do basic prep. Sierra didn't argue. She never argued. She just nodded and went back to her office and worked until her vision blurred. She was living at the firm now. She had a toothbrush in her desk drawer. She slept on the couch when she couldn't keep her eyes open. She ate whatever the vending machine offered and drank coffee until her hands trembled. She had wanted to be a lawyer since she was young. Her parents had immigrated from Accra. Her mother cleaned hotel rooms. Her father drove a cab. They had worked themselves to exhaustion so their daughter could sit in a high-floor office and fight for people who had been harmed. And now she was failing them. Not because she wasn't smart enough, not because she hadn't worked hard enough, because the one document that could win this case simply didn't seem to exist. It was late at night when she put her head on her desk and cried. She didn't know anyone was listening, but someone was. Someone who had been watching the Harmon case for weeks. Someone who had read every document on her desk. Someone who had seen the answer from the very first night and had spent years training himself to stay silent. But hearing her cry through that door, something cracked inside him. Something he had kept locked away since the day he lost everything. And for the first time in years, Jalen Reed could not walk past. The hallway was empty. The fluorescent lights hummed their usual midnight song. Jalen stood outside Sierra's office with his mop in one hand and a trash bag in the other. He could hear her through the door. Not loud crying. The quiet kind. The kind that comes from exhaustion so deep that your body stops pretending it can handle anymore. He knew that sound. He had heard it before from a woman he had loved more than anything in the world. A woman who had cried the same way when they took everything from them. Delilah. He closed his eyes. He had a choice. The same choice he made every night. Walk past, stay invisible, protect the quiet life he had built from the wreckage of the one he'd lost. He looked at the mop in his hand. A mop. This is what his life had become. A man who once commanded courtrooms in Accra, holding a mop on the high floor of someone else's empire. He had been reading Sierra's files for weeks. He couldn't help it. The Harmon case was everywhere, spread across her desk, pinned to her corkboard, stacked on the floor. He had seen the case architecture the first night. Strong foundation, good evidence, but a fatal flaw in the center that nobody could see because they were too close to it. The contract, page, Brielle Harmon's signature on the original distribution agreement, a clean signature, bold, the kind of signature that belongs to a woman who signs things with authority. But then page, the amendment, the one Harmon's legal team insisted didn't exist, the one the CEO swore under oath she had never seen. And Jalen had looked at that amendment on the third night. He had tilted the document under the desk lamp, and he had seen it immediately. The same signature, the same flourish on the H, the same downward slant on the V, the same pressure pattern on the final stroke. Brielle Harmon had signed the original contract, and she had signed the amendment. She had signed it twice. The amendment authorized continued distribution of Veritol after the safety reports, and it was the document that proved the CEO knew the drug was dangerous and sold it anyway. And it had been sitting in the case files the entire time on page with her signature on it. Dozens of lawyers had looked at that document. Not one of them had compared the signature on page to the signature on page. Not one had held them side by side. Not one had done what Jalen had trained his entire career to do, find the lie. And he had known for weeks. And he had said nothing. Because the last time Jalen Reed spoke up about a signature, about fraud, about the truth hidden inside a document, they destroyed him. They took his license. his firm, his reputation, his wife. But tonight, standing in that hallway, hearing that young woman cry over a case he could solve in 3 words, the silence became heavier than the risk. Jalen set down his mop. He pushed open her office door. She was asleep. Head on her desk, files everywhere, coffee cups stacked like a small city, her laptop still open, the contract on the screen. He stood there for seconds. He looked at the desk, at the contract, at the woman who reminded him of someone he couldn't save. Then he reached for the yellow sticky note dispenser on the corner of her desk. He pulled a pen from the cup and he wrote 3 words. He placed the note on top of the contract right on page where she would see it, and he picked up his mop. He left the office. He didn't look back. Seconds. That's how long it took. Security footage would later confirm it. The janitor entered the office and left. Seconds to change 2 lives forever. And on his way out, he passed Vance in the lobby. "Good night," Professor Vance said. Jalen paused. Something different on his face tonight. Something Vance had never seen. "Good night, Vance." He walked out into the Atlanta night when Sierra Vance woke up early in the morning. She almost missed it. A small yellow square, sitting on top of 1,000 pages of legal documents. 3 words written in black ink, in handwriting that was more precise than any lawyer's. She read them and her hands started shaking because she didn't know what those 3 words meant. Not yet. But she knew they hadn't been there when she fell asleep, and she knew that whoever wrote them had read the entire case. She turned a page, and then she stopped breathing. She signed twice. That's what the note said. 3 words, black ink on yellow paper. She signed twice. Sierra held page in her left hand, page in her right. Side by side, the signatures staring back at her. Brielle Harmon, Brielle Harmon. The same sweeping H, the same sharp V, the same pressure, the same angle. The same hand, the CEO of Harmon Pharmaceuticals, had signed the original distribution agreement, and she had signed the amendment authorizing continued sales after the safety concerns were raised. The amendment she testified under oath she had never seen. The amendment her legal team certified did not exist. The amendment that proved she knew. She knew the drug was dangerous. She knew people were being hurt, and she signed off on selling it anyway. Sierra's heart was hammering. She laid both pages on her desk. She pulled out a magnifying glass from her drawer. She wasn't a handwriting expert, but she didn't need to be. The match was obvious. It was so obvious that she couldn't understand how anyone had missed it. How had dozens of lawyers looked at these documents and not compared these 2 signatures because they were pages apart? Because no one reads a contract side by side. Because when a defense team tells you a document doesn't exist, flipped it over. Nothing on the back. No, flipped it over. Nothing on the back, no name, no initials, just 3 words. She looked around her office. The door was closed. The hallway was empty. The cleaning crew would have come through hours ago. The cleaning crew. She grabbed both pages and the sticky note and ran. Preston Hale's office. She didn't knock. She pushed through the door. "Mr. Hale, I found it." Hale looked up from his desk. Early morning. He was already in the office, already wearing the stress on his face. "Found what?" "The link. Brielle Harmon's signature. It's on both documents, the contract and the amendment. She signed it twice. That's impossible. They're team certified. Look. She slapped both pages on his desk side by side. Hale stared. He leaned forward. He put on his glasses. He looked from one signature to the other, and the color drained from his face. How did we miss this? I don't know. Who found it? Sierra hesitated. She held up the sticky note. Someone left this on my desk overnight. I don't know who. Hale took the note, turned it over. 3 words in precise handwriting. He picked up his phone. Get the partners in the conference room. All of them. Now, within an hour, senior partners sat around the mahogany table, both pages projected on the screen. Handwriting analysis already ordered, and the mood in the room shifted from panic to disbelief to something that looked a lot like victory. The match was undeniable. Brielle Harmon had perjured herself. The amendment was real. The smoking gun existed. The case was saved. But Preston Hale wasn't celebrating. He was sitting at the head of the table, turning a small yellow sticky note over and over in his fingers. Someone in this building had seen what his entire team had missed. And it wasn't a lawyer. He called building security. I need the camera footage from last night. Floor. Between midnight and morning. I want to see everyone who went near Sierra Vance's office check the cameras. If this story has its hooks in you, stay with me. Because what those cameras showed, and what they discovered about the man in the footage, it's the kind of truth that makes an entire room forget how to speak. The security office was in the basement, small, warm, monitors stacked floor to ceiling, and Preston Hale stood behind Vance Palmer's chair. Lila Chen beside him, Sierra behind them both. Pull up high floor, Hale said. Last night, start at midnight. Vance's fingers moved across the keyboard. He already knew what they were going to see, and his stomach was in knots. The footage appeared. Hallway camera, high floor, timestamp midnight. They watched. Fast forward. Empty hallway. Empty hallway. The occasional sweep of Jalen's mop passing through the frame. Nothing. Nothing. Jalen empties a trash can at the far end of the hall. Nothing. Jalen appears in the hallway pushing his mop bucket. He stops outside Sierra's office. He stands at her door. Seconds. Then he opens the door, steps inside, puts down the mop. The camera can't see inside the office, but they can see the hallway empty, waiting. Seconds later, Jalen walks back out, mop in hand. He doesn't rush. He doesn't look around. He just walks calm, steady, like a man who has done something irreversible and made peace with it. Hale pointed at the screen. Who is that? Vance swallowed. That's Jalen Reed, night cleaning crew. How long has he worked here? Years. Hale turned to Lila. How does a janitor know about contract signatures? Lila was already on her laptop. Her fingers moved fast. She typed his name into the search bar. Reed Ghana Law. She pressed enter and the screen filled with results. Articles, court records, academic journals, photographs, page after page. Lila clicked the first result. A legal journal. She read the headline. Then she read it again. Then she turned the laptop toward Hale. Hale read it. His mouth opened. No sound came out. Sierra leaned forward. She read it over his shoulder. Her hand flew to her mouth. Because Jalen Reed was not a janitor. He had never been just a janitor. And the story of how one of the most brilliant legal minds in West Africa ended up mopping floors on the high floor of their building was a story that none of them were prepared to hear. Lila closed the laptop. She looked at Hale. She looked at Sierra. And she said 5 words that changed the direction of the next hours. Bring him in with respect. This is the part of the story they didn't know, the part Jalen had carried alone for years in silence. All while he mopped their floors and emptied their trash and read their case files in the dark. Reed graduated top of his class from the University of Ghana School of Law. His professors called him the machine because he could read a contract once and find every flaw, every loophole, every lie hidden between the lines. He was the youngest senior partner at a respected law firm in Accra. He specialized in corporate fraud. Companies hired him to audit contracts. Governments hired him to investigate corruption. He could find a forged signature the way a musician hears a wrong note. Instantly, instinctively. His wife Delilah was a lawyer too. Human rights. She fought for the people that nobody else would represent. The farmers whose land was stolen. The workers whose wages disappeared. The families poisoned by companies that didn't care. They were the golden couple of Ghanaian law. Brilliant, principled, unstoppable, and until they stopped the wrong person. The case was simple. A mining company was dumping chemicals into the water supply of villages outside Kumasi. People were getting sick. Children were showing up at clinics with rashes that wouldn't heal. The company denied everything. Reed took the case. He found the proof, internal documents, falsified safety reports, a contract that showed the company knew exactly what they were doing and chose profit over people. The case was airtight. The trial date was set. Reed got a phone call. A powerful judge in the Accra circuit. A man whose name was spoken in whispers. Come to my chambers alone. Reed went. The judge was sitting behind his desk, calm, smiling. The kind of smile that has no warmth in it. You're going to drop the case. With respect, Your Honor, I'm not. This isn't a negotiation. The people behind that company are powerful. They are connected. They do not lose cases. Then this will be their first time. The judge leaned forward. The smile vanished. If you walk into that courtroom, I will end your career. I will have your license revoked. I will make sure no firm in Ghana will touch you. Drop the case. Reed, this is your only warning. Looked at the judge. He thought about Delilah, about the villages, about the children. No, he said. He walked out. Within months, everything was gone. The Ghana Bar Association received an anonymous complaint, fabricated charges of misconduct, evidence manufactured so perfectly that even Reed couldn't prove it was fake. His license was revoked. The firm dissolved under pressure. His clients were intimidated into silence. Every case he had built erased. Delilah was fired from her position at the Human Rights Commission. Their bank accounts were frozen. Their home was seized. They went from the top of the legal world to nothing. And then Delilah got sick. The stress, the poverty, the heartbreak of watching everything they had built disappear because her husband refused to be corrupt. She died later, held her hand in a hospital bed in Accra. She looked at him with those eyes, the eyes that had once burned with justice, and she said, "You did the right thing. Don't ever forget that he buried his wife. He buried his career and he bought a one-way ticket to Atlanta with the last money he had. His law degree was worthless in America. His reputation destroyed. He found the janitor job at Hale Chen and Associates through a church connection. He told no one who he was. He told no one he had been. He just cleaned. And every night when the offices were empty, he read the law because the law was all he had left of the man Delilah had believed in. Years invisible, silent, the most brilliant legal mind on the high floor, holding a mop. Lila Chen read the articles. She read the court records. She read the tributes written by Reed's former colleagues in Accra. She read about the disbarment, about Delilah, about the villages that never got justice because the one lawyer brave enough to fight for them was silenced. She closed her laptop. She looked at Preston Hale. We need to talk to him, not as a janitor, as a colleague. Hale stared at her. He mops our floors, Lila, and he just saved your $1 million case, so I suggest you show some respect. The next morning, the partners' conference room, glass walls, the Atlanta skyline stretching behind them, leather chairs around a mahogany table. Every partner was seated. Preston Hale at the head, Lila Chen to his right, Sierra standing by the door. The room was silent. The door opened. Jalen Reed walked in, and he was not wearing his gray janitor's uniform. He was wearing a suit, dark, simple, the only one he owned. He had bought it at a thrift store for a church event. It was old but pressed, the creases sharp, the collar clean. He'd look different, not because of the suit, because of how he carried himself. The hunched shoulders were gone. The downcast eyes were gone. The invisible man, who had shuffled through their hallways for years, was standing in the doorway of the partners' conference room with his chin level and his eyes steady. The posture of a man who once commanded courtrooms. Every partner in the room felt it. Something shifted in the air, the way a room changes when someone with authority enters it. Hale cleared his throat. Mr. Reed, please sit down. Looked at the chair, a partner's chair. He hadn't sat in one in years. He sat, silence. Hale folded his hands. It has come to our attention that you left a note on Miss Vance's desk nights ago. I did. 3 words. She signed twice. Can you explain what you meant? Reed looked around the table. Faces, some curious, some skeptical, some unable to meet his eyes. He spoke. The Harmon case relies on proving that Brielle Harmon personally authorized distribution of Veritol. After the safety concerns were documented, your team has been looking for a separate document, a memo, an email, a recording, something explicit. He paused. You didn't need to look for a new document. The proof was already in the case files. Page of the original distribution agreement, Brielle Harmon's signature. Then page the safety amendment, the same signature, the same flourish on the H, the same downward pressure on the V, the same baseline slant, the same ink weight. She signed the original contract and she signed the amendment. The amendment she testified under oath she had never seen. A handwriting analysis will confirm the match. But I can tell you now, it's the same hand. She signed it twice. The room was completely still. Preston Hale stared at Reed across the table. He stopped himself, but the word hung in the air. A janitor finished for him. Hale said nothing. I wasn't always a janitor, Mr. Hale. Lila slid a folder across the table. Printouts, articles, court records from Ghana, Reed's credentials, his case history, his disbarment. The partners read one by one in silence, page by page. The room grew quieter with every page turned. Senior partner looked up first. His face was pale. You were disbarred for refusing to help a corrupt judge, yes. And you've been cleaning our offices for years, yes. Took off his glasses. He rubbed his eyes. Years. The words sat in the room like a weight. Sierra was standing by the door. She hadn't moved. Tears were falling down her face, not from sadness, from the kind of anger that comes when you realize the world broke someone it shouldn't have been allowed to touch. Hale stood up. He walked around the table. He stopped in front of, and he extended his hand. Mr. Reed, I owe you an apology, not just for this case, for years of walking past you like you didn't exist. Looked at Hale's hand. He looked at the partners. He looked at the skyline through the glass. Then he shook it. You don't owe me anything, Mr. Hale. I didn't leave that note for credit. I left it because the case deserved to be right and because a young woman was working herself to death, trying to find an answer that was already sitting in front of her. He looked at Sierra. She reminded me of someone who believed the law could fix anything, and I couldn't watch her lose faith in it. Hale straightened. Mr. Reed, I'd like to discuss a different role for you at this firm. I'm not looking for charity. This isn't charity. This is a firm that just realized it has been walking past the most qualified person in the building for years. We need to fix that starting now. Was quiet. I'll need a desk, he said, not a mop. The room exhaled. Lila smiled, laughed. Sierra pressed her hands to her face, and Jalen Reed, the janitor of Hale Chen and Associates, sat in a partner's chair for the first time in years. The trial began days later. The prosecution's case had been rebuilt overnight. The two signatures, the handwriting analysis, the forensic ink comparison, everything Jalen had seen in seconds, confirmed by experts in hours. Brielle Harmon's defense team scrambled, and they filed emergency motions. They demanded the amendment be excluded. They argued chain of custody. They threw everything at the wall. Nothing stuck because the evidence was clean. It had been in the case files from the beginning, sitting on page, waiting for someone to see it. Someone finally did. Was not in the courtroom. He chose to stay at the firm in his new office, a small one on a lower floor, not the high one. He didn't want the high one, and he wanted a quiet room where he could read and think and do the work he was born to do. But he watched the verdict on his laptop alone. Door closed. The jury deliberated for hours. When they came back, the foreperson stood. We, the jury, find in favor of the plaintiff. We award damages in the amount of millions. The courtroom erupted. Sierra was shaking. Hale was on his feet. The Harmon legal team sat frozen, back at the firm. Jalen closed his laptop, and he leaned back in his chair. He closed his eyes. He thought about Delilah, about the villages outside Kumasi, about the judge who had told him to stay silent, about the years of mopping floors and reading case files in the dark. I did the right thing, he whispered. I never forgot. There was a knock on his door. Sierra, she was holding two things, a framed copy of the sticky note and a cup of coffee. I thought you might want this back. She held up the frame and the yellow note mounted behind glass. 3 words in black ink. You framed it? It saved millions and families got justice. It deserves a frame. She set it on his desk. She set the coffee beside it. And I brought this because I realized in months of working here, no one ever brought you coffee. You were always the one cleaning up our cups. Looked at the framed note, at the coffee, at this young woman who reminded him so much of Delilah. Thank you, Sierra. Thank you for not walking past. She left. Jalen sat in his quiet office, the Atlanta skyline in the window, a framed sticky note on his desk, a cup of coffee going cold because he forgot to drink it. And for the first time in years, he wasn't invisible. Some people carry genius in silence, not because they have nothing to say, but because the last time they spoke, the world punished them for it. Jalen Reed was the most brilliant person in that building. For years, years of mopping floors, years of reading case files in the dark, years of watching lawyers half his ability walk past him like he was furniture. He didn't leave that note for recognition. He didn't do it for a job. He did it because a young woman was breaking under the weight of a case she couldn't solve. And he had the answer written in 3 words. The people you walk past every day, the janitor, the security guard, the woman who cleans the office after you leave. They have stories you've never heard. They carry scars you've never seen. And some of them are carrying a brilliance the world tried to destroy. 3 words, a sticky note, and a janitor who could see what dozens of lawyers couldn't. Don't walk past people. You never know who they are. If this story stayed with you, subscribe and hit that notification bell. Because every story we tell carries a lesson. And the next one, it might be the one that makes you look twice at the person you've been walking past every single day. In the hushed corridors of overlooked lives, where brilliance often hides beneath the veil of humility, the journey of Jalen Reed unveils a heart-wrenching truth. Never dismiss the unseen souls around you, for they may carry wisdom forged in fires you cannot fathom. Once a titan of justice in distant courtrooms, Jalen was silenced by corruption's cruel hand, losing his career, his beloved Delilah, and his voice, reduced to mopping floors in a gleaming tower of privilege. For years, he glided through shadows, absorbing the law's intricacies from discarded files, his genius a silent sentinel amid the arrogance of those who never glanced his way. Yet, in a moment of quiet compassion, hearing young Sierra's despair over a crumbling case, he shattered his invisibility with 3 simple words on a sticky note. She signed twice. This revelation, born from his unyielding eye for truth, unraveled a web of deceit that dozens of elite lawyers had overlooked, saving fortunes and restoring faith in justice. Jalen's story pierces the soul, reminding us that society's hierarchies blind us to hidden treasures. The janitor, the guard, the quiet observer whose scars hold stories of resilience and intellect. It evokes the ache of lost potential, the regret of unnoticed worth, urging us to pause, to see, to honor the depth in every human encounter. In a world rushing past one another, this lesson whispers that true power lies not in titles or towers, but in the empathy to recognize the extraordinary in the ordinary, transforming indifference into profound connection. If this tale has stirred echoes of recognition or moved you to reflect on those you've overlooked, hit that subscribe button now and turn on notifications to uncover more stories that awaken the heart. Share in the comments. Who's the unsung hero in your life, whose wisdom changed everything? Let's celebrate their light together.